As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. This is a book that I recommend you read and listen to the audio version of this book, and listen to it a number of times. And listen to it a number of times in different stages of your life. Because this book is very short. It's only like 80-something pages. But contained within it are paragraphs, sentences of wisdom that are timeless, based on principles that are designed to reorganize, restructure the way you think. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, going back to the video that I made a little while back on the power of the subconscious mind, if you haven't seen that, I recommend that you do that. What you want to do is you want to recognize how your thinking affects the actions that you take. Okay? How your thinking affects the actions that you take. And it's the actions that you take that's going to produce the results that you want. And we have a very interesting litmus test that we could do on ourselves. We could look and see if our thinking is positive or empowering, or if it's negative or disempowering, or spectrums, or aspects, or areas in between the two spectrums, I should say, of positive and negative. And the more you can feel empowered in your thinking, and the more you can carry and transact in this world based on positivity, the higher the likelihood that you're going to produce results. But it's not always as easy as it sounds, because if it was that easy, everyone would be doing it. And yet, it's only a few select groups of individuals that are able to do it. And there's many levels to it, so you can get better and better at commanding your thoughts. Think of your thoughts or your mind as not you, but an aspect of you that you can control. And you can control it and direct it towards a specific worthwhile purpose. Now, a lot of us identify with our mind, and we think that our mind is us, when in actuality, we control our mind. And in earlier stages, we allow others or information from the external world to control our mind, to tell us what to think, how to behave, how to transact. And later on, we recognize that these thoughts are driving our actions, and it's getting us to do things that are in the favor of others. And it might not be mutually beneficial to us. So when you get to this point, you recognize that if you change your thinking, if you systematically, strategically, and consciously ensure that you are inputting good, positive, empowering information into your brain, your thoughts are going to change, and it's going to change the actions, which obviously will change the results that you have. And this book is all about that. It's all about changing the way you think. But not just changing the way you think into some random way. This book is designed to change the way you think so that you can have more power over the dynamics that you have control over for the objective that you desire. So whether it's business, health and fitness, whatever area of your life, if you change the way you think in a way that empowers you, you're going to increase the likelihood that you're going to get the results that you want. And according to spiritual texts, you're going to tap into higher levels of power, higher levels of understanding, levels of power and understanding that a lot of people don't have access to because they're very reactive to the external world. They see themselves as the effect rather than the cause. And in earlier stages, we find ourselves seeing ourselves as the effect rather than the cause because for valid reasons. You see, when you're born into this world, you have to rely upon others to teach you how to navigate, teach you how to walk, teach you the rules of society, the laws of physical reality, different things that you need to learn in order to thrive, in order to survive, and in order to do your purpose. You need to understand fundamentals. So we rely on people. Later on, we recognize that once we get the fundamentals down, that we're able to come up with our own insights. We start to think like entrepreneurs. We start to think for ourselves. we start to recognize that we always knew what we wanted, and we held ourselves back from achieving what we want because we got too vested in what other people were telling us to do. And while much of what they were saying was valid in terms and context to the basics and fundamentals and principles, there was a lot of information that was not going to help us connect to our true purpose. So part of this journey is to figure out what your true purpose is. And in order to do that, you have to learn to think for yourself. You have to learn to tap into yourself and listen to your inner voice. This book helps you do it. You have to also learn to trust your judgment and intuition. You have to get to a certain point where you actually feel confident in doing so. This could take some time. Okay, some people can get this at earlier stages in life. They just learn really fast. And for some of us, it could take a lot longer. But the goal here is to recognize that our thinking is a litmus test or an indicator, a revelation of who we are and how we see reality, and an indicator if we're moving towards our goals, our vision, our purpose, or we're moving away from it. So even though this is a short book, the extracts that I've pulled out of it, the paragraphs, do it no justice. It's worth that you read it because depending on where you are in life, it's going to have a totally different meaning for you. And then as you evolve, reread it again. Listen to the audio again, and you're going to pick up even more insights. Because the reality is in life, the answer is always in front of your face. It's just that you might not see it, but you have to have experience through action taking, through references, to be able to see the answers in front of you. So this is a very normal process. There's nothing weird about this. If you want to be able to tap into higher levels of understanding, you have to look at how you think. Now, there's a lot of books written on this subject, and I'm going to discuss a lot of these books on this channel on this subject, and I have in my past videos. And it's important to look at the subject of how you think from multiple different angles, because how you think really comes from predominantly your subconscious mind. Your past experiences shape the way you think. In fact, you could look at the way you think right now, and you could probably track it back to its origins as to why you think that way. And if you could rewrite those stories into empowering stories, if they are disempowering stories, then you're going to find yourself automatically doing the things you need to do. And one of the ways to rewrite the stories is through repetition, to consistently and constantly feed your mind positive information. Feed your subconscious mind positive information that's empowering. Your subconscious mind will take in information as is. It's your conscious mind that has the judgment that says whether it's right or wrong. Your subconscious mind will accept information as is. That's why when you're watching television or you're watching or consuming information that you know is negative, you must understand that your subconscious mind accepts it as is. It doesn't make the judgment. And it gets you to navigate from that perspective. And this is indicated in your thinking. So let's go ahead and get started. The effect of thought on circumstances. Circumstances do not make the man. It reveals him to himself. So when you're navigating life, you're communicating with people, you're just observing reality, and you experience circumstances, okay? Certain feelings, negative things that happen to you, positive things that happen to you. It's not really what happens to you that matters the most, but how you respond to it. This is going to be an indication of your ability to control the dynamics that you have control over, or be thrown and led into chaos by focusing on dynamics that you don't have control over. So pay attention to what you have happening to you and understand that the world is a projection of your internal reality. You make sense of it based on how you see reality, which is really just based on your past programming, and there might be some genetic elements to it. However, there's a lot we have control over. So circumstances reveal to us what we need to do. One of my favorite exercises is to connect with people who don't see things my way. I love to talk to people who have totally different views of reality. And what I'm interested in is their reality and how I feel about what they're telling me. Do I tense up? Do I throw judgment and negativity, or do I listen openly? The sign of true confidence, and if you want to raise your self-confidence, is to be able to accept somebody else's viewpoints, how somebody else sees reality, and proceed in the way you intended to proceed. This is not from a place of force, but rather from a place of accepting and allowing and true core power or core confidence. And by having conversations with people, you could see how reactive you are. The goal here is to be the cause rather than the effect. And when you're reactive, you tend to go into chaotic states of mind. And when you're in chaotic states of mind, it's harder to maintain control of your thinking. It's harder to focus on the positive. So observe yourself. And when you catch yourself tensing up or feeling negative, or disempowering thoughts come up, or having the need to focus on who is right rather than what isn't right, take a note of that and track back to see where you got that way of thinking. And you'll find that it's probably not valid, because in that situation, all it did was break the connection with the other person. And what it did was it showed you that you are actually more reactive. And when you're being reactive, that your confidence level drops. One of the things that I talked about in my previous video, Flow, is how the importance of challenge meeting skill will put you into a flow state. It's a very balanced state of mind, but it's also one that's not totally balanced in the sense that it's a counterbalance. Is that you're constantly pivoting between challenge and skill till you get into a certain groove. And then when you're in that groove, you can perform really well. You can tap into intelligence that you have within you that is being distorted based on tensing up. And if you can interact with someone and find these places where you're tensing up, and then work on loosening yourself up, might not happen in that situation, but outside of situations through various exercises, then what you can do is you can find yourself being looser, being more fluid. If you're interested in building a business, for example, one of the important concepts when dealing with a marketplace is to pivot. A lot of times when you start out, the marketplace is not going to respond the way you want it to respond. But if you get reactive to the marketplace, then you might try to force yourself to force your idea into the marketplace, and that usually doesn't turn out too well. Instead, you got to look at the stimulus that the marketplace is giving you, and based on that, you have to be able to adjust your proposition, your position, the products and services you're offering into one that's a match, so it's win-win, so you can grow your business. So it's a valuable exercise to constantly be aware of where you're tensing up when you're around others. But not just others, when you're reading books, when you're watching television, when you're doing your work, when you're dealing with your clients. It's important to be aware of what these areas are, because when you go to work on them, you'll find that you won't tense up and you'll be able to pivot more effectively, which will help you. When he begins to reflect upon his condition and to search diligently for the law upon which is being established, he then becomes the wise master, directing his energies with intelligence and fashioning his thoughts to fruitful issues. So again, when you reflect upon how you respond, and then you figure out the law as to why you respond that way, till you're over it. Okay, when I'm talking about negative responses here, where you tense up, where you lock up, and then you figure out why that's happening, and you overcome it, then you're able to redirect your energy, pivot with intelligence towards what you have control over. In life, there's things you have control over and there's things that you don't have control over. However, there's far more things that we have control over, even in the worst circumstances. But like I said earlier, the challenge is that we don't see that. But we can start seeing it, and we can start seeing it once we start to go work on ourselves and clear our mind to the point where we're present, we're aware, and we're internalizing the dynamics at play. And based on that, we can pull upon our intelligence in a calm and relaxed way and move forward. Circumstances, however, are so complicated. Thought is so deeply rooted, and the conditions of happiness vary so vastly with individuals that a man's entire soul condition, although it may be known to himself, cannot be judged by another from the external aspect of his life alone. Okay, so only you know and can know what's going on with yourself at a deep level. You can seek counsel in others. You can get others to guide you. And this can help you on your journey for certain things. But don't make the mistake to rely upon others too much. You have to learn to rely upon yourself. As I mentioned earlier, in early stages of life, you naturally tend to rely upon others because you're just being acclimated to this world. It's a new world. You're born into it. You don't know how it works. And that's okay. But in later stages, you must learn how to rely upon yourself because these circumstances that happen to you externally are aspects that could be drawn by your subconscious mind. In other words, your subconscious mind could be creating these scenarios in the external world for you that are so deeply rooted in certain thought processes that, and they're so complex that you really have to meditate and analyze and reflect deeply within yourself to pick up on the nuances and the pathological nature of them to understand how they work. This is why it's important to learn why you learn and learn a lot about yourself. Dedicate a large portion of your life to studying yourself, to see why you do what you do. You should actually be the biggest study of your life. A lot of times we spend hours and hours studying about an external subject and not dedicating a lot of time studying about ourselves. Well, if you learn to study yourself and you learn what works for you, then you can get better at the 80-20 principle, the Pareto principle, where in a lot of things in life, 20% of the things that we do produce 80% of the results. And if you're self-reflective, you can figure out what this 20% is. And if you go even deeper, you can fraction that 20% down to another 80-20, and then fraction that 20% down to another 80-20, which will give you massive leverage. But you have to know yourself to be able to understand this leverage to a higher level. Now, what I'm saying might seem complicated if you're new to this, but understand something, that if you're on this journey and you continue on this journey and you take it one step at a time every day and you focus on being present and aware and valuing what you have in front of you, then you're going to make rapid progress. And if you recognize that the external world is a projection of your internal state and you're giving it meaning real time, and that you could rewrite that meaning based on the thoughts you have in your mind, then you are going to make progress. You're going to make faster progress. You're going to recognize when you need help, when you need to reach out to someone, and you can recognize when you can find the answers within yourself. As a progressive and evolving being, man is where he is that he may learn, that he may grow, and that as he learns the spiritual lesson which any circumstance contains for him, it passes away and gives place to other circumstances. Life has a way of repeating the same lesson over and over again. You might find yourself in the same kind of relationships, whether it be romantic relationships or business relationships, certain same kind of circumstances over and over again. And if you find yourself in those kind of circumstances over again, don't blame the person. Look within yourself and see what is attracting it. What thought processes do you carry? What belief systems do you have that get you to place yourself in that situation over and over again? Why does it keep happening? Once you recognize the root of this, and this requires deep reflection, as well as maybe reaching out for guidance from some people who really understand how this stuff works, you are able to then rewrite those stories, change your paradigm around, change your thinking around. You'll start to see reality differently, and you'll find that those things no longer exist. This is especially true for business, like with anything in life. In business, you start out, might not get the results that you want, and you recognize that these circumstances happen. The deals don't go through, all kinds of or negative things happen to you, I should say. And, you don't want these things to happen, but they're lessons. And then once you recognize the lesson that's contained within that circumstance, and you really overcome it, like you internally overcome it, you break through within yourself, then you'll find that you'll move on to a higher level of business. You won't have those same problems anymore. And I can speak for this because I've been in entrepreneurship now solidly, full-time, for 8 years. Prior to that, I was in 10 years in corporate, and the same thing repeated itself. In the starting of my first years in corporate, I was very reactive. Everything seemed overwhelming. But as I moved on in my career, I started to make sense of the circumstances, and I started to move to higher levels. Not just higher levels of understanding, but in reality, higher levels of position, higher levels of responsibility, which brought in a higher level of income, and the same applies for business. A man is literally what he thinks, his character being the sum of all his thoughts. This is something we have to accept first, and through experience, we accept it more and more. And your character is what is your value to your world, okay? The value you bring to your world is based on your character. The things you do will seem automatic once you really work on your character. They will seem effortless. They will seem to just flow out of you. And your thoughts are really revealing to you the level of scarcity thinking or abundance thinking that you have, the level of empowering thinking or disempowering thinking that you have. So I want you to really be aware of your thoughts that you carry throughout the day. And also look at the thoughts that you have in different circumstances and different situations. And then I want you to take an inventory and look at the things that seem to be very easy for you, okay, the strengths that you have. And look at the thoughts that are associated with it. Chances are, in your reality, it seems easy. Your thoughts seem to flow with that particular circumstance. Then, on the flip side, look at the areas where you have challenge, where you're not getting what you want. And then be aware of your thoughts that govern those realities, or those circumstances. You'll find, and sometimes you'll have to dig pretty deep, but there is elements of disempowering negative thinking associated with the lack of results that you have. Act is the blossom of thought, and joy and suffering are its fruits. Thus does a man garner in the sweet and bitter fruitage of his own husbandry. Maybe we've discussed that. By the right choice and true application of thought, man ascends to the divine perfection. By the abuse and wrong application of thought, he descends below the level of the beast. Between these two extremes are all the grades of character, and man is their maker and master. Everybody wants to raise themselves to a higher level of success, a higher level of vibration, a higher level of calm. And we have within us the possibility to do so. We only have to look at how we believe the world to work. If we see the world generally as a friendly place, then our thoughts tend to be more positive. If we see the world to be negative or an unfriendly place, our thoughts tend to be more negative. And the more we attach to the negative thoughts, the more we will lower our vibration, and circumstances will match that. We'll find that we're taken advantage of. We'll find that we're not able to handle ourselves well in business situations. We might give up. We'll do all these disempowering things. And if we start to see the world as a friendly place, We will rewrite the stories for things like rejection, circumstances not going our way, the marketplace not cooperating the way we want, people not wanting to deal with us or share our point of view. We'll be okay with it, which will calibrate our thinking towards what we have control over. And then it'll just increase the likelihood that we'll get the results because we'll move down that direction. This is quite pragmatic stuff if you really think about it. There's nothing woo-woo about it. Not what he wishes and prays for does a man get, but what he justly earns. His wishes and prayers are only gratified and answered when they harmonize with his thoughts and actions. When you wish for something and you pray for something and you look to the skies or you look within or whatever you do to really want something, you have to ask yourself, are your actions and your thoughts really in alignment with what you want? In other words, are you taking action towards that? Because action is just another word for faith. Because if you believe that you're going to get, and if you know that what you're going after is something that you deserve, then you'll have no problem taking the action. But if you have a hard time taking the action, then there's a conflict. And those conflicts are revealed in your thoughts. So prayer or wishes have to be aligned with thoughts and actions for it to flow. One of the conversations that I have with aspiring entrepreneurs and business people is I really want to know why they want to be entrepreneurs. Why do they want to build a business? Because entrepreneurship and business is a lot of dedication. You have to invest pretty much all your time every day, 7 days a week. And if you don't like the investment of time involved, if you rather do other things that are outside of the realm of what's going to move you forward towards your entrepreneurial endeavor goal, then it's going to seem very stressful. It's not going to be in harmony. And you're going to push and you're going to get burned out. And maybe you might get to the destination where you'll find success, but you'll get there burnt out. And sometimes people just want to do business because they feel that that's where the money is. And that's where the success is. And while that's true, that those that are first generation wealth, who create a lot of wealth for themselves, a lot of times are entrepreneurs and they build successful businesses. So that's a high likelihood path to create a high amount of wealth. We have to understand that those that succeed are either pushing themselves to the point where they get there and they're not satisfied, or that's who they are. That's who they are. So we have to reflect upon ourselves and really ask ourselves why we're doing what we want to do. And if we recognize that there's a lot of investment in time, for example, in entrepreneurship, to get to the end result, then we have to make peace and actually enjoy the process. Now, this is the beauty behind this, is you could learn how to enjoy things that other people don't enjoy. Rather than pushing through it, find the joy in it. So that's why I recommend watching my video on flow. Because if you connect the things that you do on a daily basis that are required towards your vision, and you recognize you're doing it for it, it becomes just like anything else a professional does. Take, for example, the professional athlete. The professional athlete plays the sport, but outside of the arena, they train. They endure hours of practice. They exercise. They eat healthy. They keep themselves in a certain place where they're not abusing their body and abusing their mind. And the players that do this have to do this all the time because they're playing at a professional level. And the ones that enjoy it, you could see the grace and finesse in them. And that's reflected when they're in the arena. Okay, so we can look at this from multiple different angles. But the core here is that we have to be in alignment. Our wishes and prayers have to be in alignment with thoughts and actions. And it should flow, and it should flow gracefully. The soul attracts that what it secretly harbors, that what it loves, and also what it fears. It reaches the heights of its cherished aspiration. It falls to the level of its unchastised desires, and circumstances are the means by which the soul receives its own. So if we look at our external world, and going back to the example I gave of entrepreneurship, if we're not getting the results we want, we really have to ask ourselves that if we're pushing, if we're forcing, and this has become kind of a thing we're just not flowingly doing, then internally, deep down inside in our subconscious mind, there's resistance. And because we're projecting our reality, we're projecting meaning onto the external world, the resistance is being projected outwards and manifested in circumstances that contain resistance. A man only begins to be a man when he ceases to whine and revile, and commences to search for the hidden justice which regulates his life. And as he adapts his mind to that regulating factor, he ceases to accuse others as the cause of his condition, and builds himself up in strong and noble thoughts, ceases to kick against circumstances, we just talked about that, but begins to use them as aids to his more rapid progress, and as a means of discovering the hidden powers and possibilities within himself. All the power you could ever want exists within yourself. You have the power. Now, a lot of us, in the earlier stages of life, we experience things that brings down our self-esteem, that brings down our self-confidence. And that gets rooted into our subconscious mind. And then we start to navigate the world from that disempowered place, that low self-esteem, low self-confidence place. And because we're navigating from a low self-confidence place, we're going to fail, obviously, to have any thought processes that indicate and allow us to tap into our internal powers, our abilities that we actually have, because we can't see them anymore. Right? Remember I said the answer is always in front of you, but you just can't see it? Well, if we can go through a point of acceptance and understanding through affirmation and exercise and so forth, that we do have the powers within, then we'll start to recognize those powers. In the beginning, we might seem, they're very lightly demonstrated. And then when we start to execute and we see our abilities of results that we get, actual concrete results that we get from these little powers that we have, we start to rewrite the story of the disempowering, low self-esteem, low self-confidence thoughts. And then authentically, our confidence goes up. And then as our confidence goes up, we start to recognize even more that we have hidden powers. And this has no end. You'll keep going higher and higher and higher. Eventually, you'll start surpassing a lot of people in the world, and you'll be having within your possession a lot of powers that people have not realized that they have within themselves. You'll become, for example, an excellent judge of character, an excellent reader of the marketplace. You'll be able to see where things are going far more ahead of time than others. It's going to seem so obvious to you. You have these abilities in you. The problem is we cloud ourselves, and not because we want to hurt ourselves, but because we have accepted a lot of low self-esteem, low self-confidence thoughts. And then when we go to remove those, we start to recognize that we have more power. We have more grace. We don't find ourselves in situations where circumstances are pushing against us and validating the disempowering, low self-esteem thoughts that come from the deep aspects of our subconscious mind that was programmed in earlier stages. And you'll find yourself not kicking against circumstances, looking at a circumstance that's not favorable objectively and say, I can either go left or right here. What am I going to do? You'll be able to make decisions really fast. One of the things that tires us out, okay, when we're talking about entrepreneurship, I mentioned that, it's a big investment of time. And those that can work tirelessly and still be energized, I know some people like that, and I'm getting to be more and more like that throughout the years because I study people like that. I look at how they think. But those that have that ability from analysis and studying them and being around them and really being Socratic and trying to figure out why they are the way they are, I find that they have an easier time making decisions. They flow through decisions. They make far more decisions in a day than most people because they make the decisions faster and they move on to the next circumstance and they decide on that and they just keep going. As a result, they get a lot of success, but they don't tire themselves out from taking too long to make a decision. Taking too long to make a decision burns mental resources inefficiently. If you can make quick decisions, if you train yourself to make quick decisions, you'll find you'll have more energy. So we actually have a lot of energy. And when we tap into flow, we pull energy from within. We pull this energy from within, and it propels us forward to a whole productive day. And we throttle that energy, or we create blockages when we have a hard time making decisions. And the reason why we have a hard time making decisions is because our thoughts, we overthink things, or we have disempowering thoughts that get us to focus on the negative when we need to make a decision. Let's talk about effect of thought on health and the body. Change of diet will not help a man who will not change his thoughts. When a man makes his thoughts pure, he no longer desires impure food. So think about this for a moment. This is obvious, accepted knowledge nowadays that when we're stressed out, or when we're harboring negative emotions, or not expressing ourselves, we'll tend to reach for the comfort of junk food. Okay? Food that temporarily makes us feel good because we don't actually feel good within ourselves. And the reason why we don't feel good about ourselves is because of the disempowering stories and the negativity we carry in our thoughts. This negative thinking is manifested through the emotions. Okay, so thoughts control the emotions. And emotions can feed the thoughts. So it's a cybernetic loop there. But we can really change things at a thought level through repetition, through exercise, through self-analysis, in a lot of different areas. And the more we tend to go through, and I mentioned this earlier about decisions, our day with ease, we set up conditions, we place ourselves in environments and situations where we're able to operate cleanly in our thoughts. The less likely we're going to desire the junk food because it's not going to be in harmony with that flow. You'll actually become even more sensitive in a good way. If you find yourself adjusting your external world and analyzing your thoughts and placing yourself in situations where you're growing and your thoughts become pure, you'll find yourself in flow a lot more. Then you might get this little desire. It'll come from the subconscious because it's used to it to have some junk food. You'll go eat that junk food, or you'll eat whatever is not healthy, the impure food, and then it won't feel good anymore. Like before, it used to give you comfort, but now it just brings your vibe all the way down. And that contrast will really irritate you. And you'll say, wow, I don't even want to eat this stuff anymore. That's the last time I'm eating this. So a lot of times we try to force changes in diet. I mean, that's one way of doing it. But again, we don't want to use force because we don't want to get to having a healthy physique or body or just good health by force. Because that's just going to create unnecessary stress on the body, and it's going to mess up other things. Might as well do it in a way where it's natural, it's flowing. And the way we do this is by addressing things at the thought level. The body is the servant of the mind. It obeys the operations of the mind, whether they be deliberately chosen or automatically expressed. At the bidding of unlawful thoughts, the body sinks rapidly into disease and decay. At the command of glad and beautiful thoughts, it becomes clothed with youthfulness and beauty. You know, there's things that are beyond our control, genetic mutations and things like that. But there's a lot of things that are within our control. And when I meet people, and I love learning about people, I always try to figure out how they got to where they are. It's one of my favorite things to do. And it's not just like if they got financial success, business success, or success. I just want to know how they got to where they are right now, like their state, their current state. Whether it's a positive state or a negative state. And I can always trace it back to how they communicate, the things that they say, the words that they use. It's very revealing. You could tell a lot about a person and yourself by the words that you use, how you communicate, your choices of words, and the meaning you give to things. You could tell a lot. And you'll find that when somebody has negative thinking, lower level thinking, it's manifested in their physical reality. Now, you won't be able to tell them that, hey, it's probably the result of your thinking, or a lot of it has to do with the result of thinking, because they might find that offensive. And that's not your place to do it unless they're opening and accepting for feedback. But it should reveal to you the correlations, the connections. Because remember, a lot of this is about self-reflection. And you have to be able to learn from any place you can get information from. Not just videos and books, but from reality, from walking around, talking with people, doing your day-to-day activities. There's so much information in front of you that will allow you to see the validity of this information, that will allow you to see how thoughts manifest in people's lives, both positive and negative. And that process will help rewire your subconscious, will increase and put a higher level of awareness on what needs to be done. Raising your level of awareness, again, is not a thing of force. When you start to recognize how many things you have control over, you get excited. And your level of awareness goes up because every moment is an opportunity to learn something. And people are teaching you about yourself. People are teaching you about yourself. Not just necessarily what they're saying, but how you feel around them is teaching you where your strengths and weaknesses are. There's tons of opportunity in this moment right now. Strong, pure, and happy thoughts build up the body in vigor and grace. The body is a delicate and plastic instrument which responds readily to the thoughts by which it is impressed, and habits of thought will produce their effects, good or bad, upon it. Let's talk about purpose, thoughts and purpose. A man should conceive of a legitimate purpose in his heart and set out to accomplish it. He should make this purpose the centralizing point of his thoughts, and it may take the form of a spiritual ideal, or it may be a worldly object, according to his nature at the time being. But whichever it is, he should steadily focus his thought forces upon the object which he sets before him. He should make this purpose his supreme duty, and should devote himself to its attainment, not allowing his thoughts to wander into inferior fancies, if I'm saying that right, longings and imaginings. To put away aimless and weakness, and to begin to think with purpose, is to enter the ranks of those strong ones who only recognize failure as one of the pathways to attainment, who make all conditions serve them, and who think strongly, attempt fearlessly, and accomplish masterfully. Thought allied fearlessly to purpose becomes creative force. He who knows this is ready to become something higher and stronger than a mere bundle of wavering thoughts and fluctuating sensations. He who does this has become the conscious and intelligent wielder of his mental powers. Everything within your awareness right now is coming to you from within. Everything that you see in your reality, that you will see 5 minutes from now, that you saw 5 minutes ago, years ago, everything is based on your internal projections. And you can control what your awareness goes on. And it doesn't mean that you disregard things and you're being blind and indifferent, but it means that you're exercising to focus on what you have control over. Recognize that everybody in this planet here is working together somehow. And everybody has different responsibilities. And you have to learn to accept people and what they're doing, And while there's people doing things that, are negative and so forth, it's far better to put control over what you are a master in, where your heart tells you to go, something that you're passionate about, that is not only fulfilling and rewarding to yourself, but is going to help others, because that's the sweet spot. The sweet spot is where your heart tells you to go. And your heart's going to always tell you to go in a place that's going to be mutually beneficial for you and others. And it's going to be different pathways. Everybody has a different pathway. You have to learn to trust the process. This is a sign of higher level of confidence. And you have to learn for indicators as to where you are moving away from this. What I find is that when people get fearful, or they have low self-esteem or low self-confidence, or they think disempowering through their thoughts, and it's very revealing in their thoughts, and you can reveal it to yourself in your thoughts, we tend to try to manipulate things rather than work with things. Now, I like to talk a lot about persuasion and communication and being persuasive in your communication. But there's a difference between being persuasive and manipulation. Manipulation is trying to get people to do your way by tricking them to get what you want, recognizing and understanding and knowing, and sometimes not knowing, they're not going to get what they want. That's not what the heart wants you to do. Persuasion, on the other hand, is effective communication designed to connect with the depths of someone, to help them get what they want in their heart's desires, that is in alignment with yours. Okay? If you study persuasion, all effective persuasion can be tracked back to breaking down and modeling what authentic people do. Okay? Authentic people who are really authentic are actually very persuasive. They don't need to use tactics, because the tactics are deployed unconsciously through the subconscious intelligence. While it's good to recognize it and learn it, and so you have reference, so you can understand, because it's very helpful to learn it. This doesn't mean you should not learn persuasion. This actually means that you should learn persuasion. But here, thought allied fearlessly to purpose becomes creative force. And he who knows this is ready to become something higher and stronger than a mere bundle of wavering thoughts. Consciously dedicating your thoughts towards a win-win purposeful outcome is something that the heart desires. Those who are not prepared for this apprehension of a great purpose should fix their thoughts upon the faultless performance of their duty, no matter how insignificant their tasks may appear. Only in this way can the thoughts be gathered and focused, and resolution and energy be developed. Which being done, there is nothing which may not be accomplished. So, when we're looking at purpose, we're not thinking of something grand necessarily, life-changing, or for others, countless others, and so forth. It doesn't have to be that. The key here is to do what you have to do today, as well as you can do it. And when you can do that, you will level up. And the key here is to value your responsibilities, no matter what they are. Don't look at the responsibilities of others and say, I want their responsibilities, because they might have some trappings of success. That's a form of giving the power away. If you really want to master your thoughts, then you want to understand that the power is within yourself. And you want to tap into the power within yourself. And the one way is to assume that everything you could ever want for your purpose is within this moment right now. And you're going to value the work that's attached to it. You're going to do it as well as possible. You're going to put a lot of love and care in the thing you're doing. And by doing this, you're going to become more aware. And one of the things we mentioned is that awareness, raising your level of awareness, is going to help you understand the origins of your thoughts. It's one thing to try to forcefully not think a thing. or thought. It's another thing to have a thought and then be able to reverse engineer to its origins. And that requires a high level of awareness. And awareness is developed through practice, through meditation, and active meditation, which is doing what you have to do right now with a lot of care, with a lot of love. So it's not about having a grandiose purpose in life and thinking that yours is greater than others. That's not what this is about. The thought factor in achievement. The universe does not favor the greedy, the dishonest, the vicious. Although it, on the mere surface, it may sometimes appear to do so, it helps the honest, the virtuous. And all the great teachers of the ages have declared this in various forms. And to prove and know it, a man has to but persist in making himself more and more virtuous by lifting up his thoughts. So we already discussed a number of ways of lifting up your thoughts. And I recommend that you make this a study. What are all the different ways that you could lift up your thoughts, that you could raise your thoughts up to one that is in alignment with benefit mutual for yourself and and others in the marketplace and the people that you serve? Because it's those thoughts that are going to be in alignment with your heart. You're going to feel it, which are going to then go into your subconscious mind. Raise your level of awareness. Create the life you desire. Allow you to create more value for others, which in turn will bring more value to you, will make your actions automatic. Okay, so we don't want this to be a forceful thing. We want to get to a point where we're in flow. One of the books that I discussed was The Charisma Myth. And the charisma myth, the three elements of charisma: power, presence, and warmth. You got to have all three to have charisma. Charisma is said to be this powerful, unexplainable feeling that we get when is projected by someone who carries that charisma. And it's when someone has a lot of charisma, they're very persuasive. We feel good around them. We feel empowered. We feel confident. We want to be part of their purpose. And if you want to have a high level of charisma, then you must understand that power through action taking has to be met with presence, which is a high level of awareness, and the warmth. It has to flow. It cannot seem forceful. Now, there might be some people that have a certain level of charisma and they have more power, or they tend to have more warmth. But we really want to improve in all those areas simultaneously to have a greater impact. And if entrepreneurship, business is your goal, then having a high level of charisma will make you a better dealer, will make you a better employer, will make you a better business partner. It'll help facilitate the necessary connections that you need to make to produce the results that you want. A strong man cannot help a weaker unless the weaker is willing to be helped. And even then, the weak man must become strong of himself. He must, by his own efforts, develop the strength which he admires in another. None but himself can alter his condition. We try to help people, but we have to help them at the level that they need help in. We can't take them from the lowest possible level and bring them all the way to the top. It won't make sense to them. We have to connect with them at their level. And there are different people that are qualified to connect with people at different levels. We have to consciously choose the area in which we're connecting with people to level them up. And that's when you become more effective at doing it. And we have to recognize that the person must have somewhat of a desire to want to change their ways, to want to level up. If they don't, then we're trying to convince someone, we're trying to manipulate them. And that's not very charismatic, but it's also an indication of a certain thought process that is not going to level you up. It's going to bring you down. He who would accomplish little must sacrifice little. He who would achieve much must sacrifice much. He who would attain highly must sacrifice greatly. Now, what's interesting is that sacrifice in the earlier stages of development can seem stressful. Like you give up, eating a certain way, indulging in debaucherous behaviors and so forth. You might find that as like something you don't want to do. But as you raise your level of thought and you go into higher vibrations, sacrifice becomes a way of life. It becomes something of flow. You no longer have a desire to do those things. And others might look at you and say, wow, you sacrifice a lot. You're very dedicated to what you do. Therefore, you're sacrificing all these other things. Well, the reality is you just don't want to do those other things. So in the starting, yes, to prove to yourself that you are worthy of, and the actions, when we talked about this earlier, you can't just wish for something, you have to take action. Those earlier stages actions are going to seem what sacrifice really means. Like you're giving something up. You really want to do this other thing, but you can't because you know you have to do this other thing. Humanity cannot forget its dreamers. It cannot let their ideals fade and die. It lives in them. It knows them in the realities which it shall one day see and know. Cherish your visions. Cherish your ideals. Cherish the music that stirs in your heart, the beauty that forms in your mind, the loveliness that drapes your purest thoughts. For out of them will grow all delightful conditions and heavenly environment. Of these, if you but remain true to them, your world will at last be built. And you too, young youthful reader, will realize the vision, not the ideal wish, of your heart, be it base or beautiful, or a mixture of both. For you will always gravitate towards that what you secretly love most. Into your hands will be placed the exact results of your own thoughts. You will receive that which you earn, no more, no less. Whatever your present environment may be, you will fall, remain, or rise with your thoughts, your vision, your ideal. Okay, so I want to emphasize this point right here. You will receive that which you earn, no more, no less. Once you start to recognize, especially in entrepreneurship, that your rewards are going to be in direct proportion to the value that you create. And, sometimes you'll see people manipulating the process, but that doesn't last very long. And they will pay it back somehow, some way. If you want this to be a long-term growth process, and you want to have a happy, enjoyable life, and you want to receive more reward, then you have to figure out creative ways to raise your value, scale your value, and dedicate yourself to create more value for those that you serve. You'll find that your rewards will increase automatically, it'll seem, as a result. Serenity. Calmness of mind is one of the beautiful jewels of wisdom. It is a result of long and patient effort in self-control. Its presence is an indication of a ripened experience, and of a more than ordinary knowledge of the laws and operations of thought. So, we talked about this. Power, presence, and warmth. Essentially calm. When someone is charismatic, they're calm, but it's not just passive calm. There's a power to it. There's a moving forward. There's a direction to it. And when someone carries that, they understand the dynamics at play. They recognize that whatever shows up, they're going to deal with it as it shows up. They have a goal, they have a vision, but they also know that the world is dynamic. Things can change. And they're not getting thrown off by the turmoil of events. They're able to execute on the maneuver smoothly, gracefully, eloquently, and from that, they're going to tap into higher levels of understanding. Those higher levels of understanding are going to provide more nuance-based insights that they could use to create more value for others. And it's through that where they're rewarded back by the world, different kinds of resources that facilitate more of that calmness. Okay? The rewards you get in life as a result of living this way are given to you not for egotistical reasons, but to be able for you to build yourself up even higher so you can give more value. And this is an ongoing cycle. Self-control is strength. Right thought is mastery. Calmness is power. Okay, so if you can control, and in the starting it's going to seem hard, but later on you'll get more graceful, your thoughts, redirect them towards things you can do in an empowering way, then that's really what strength is. And there's going to be circumstances that are really hard. And if you can do it in those circumstances where it's really hard, then you have more strength. And there's always going to be a tougher circumstance. And your strength is always going to be tested. But as you rise up, as you go to higher levels, it's important to recognize that your strength is being tested. And if you can overcome that test, there is a level higher. And for each level that you rise up, there are rewards. Not just physical rewards, spiritual rewards, happiness rewards. They're there. Right thought is mastery. Right thought is mastery. Thoughts that are designed to cleanly and swiftly produce the results are mastery. Convoluted thoughts, thoughts that over complexify, create added layers for no reason, is not a sign of mastery. It's a sign of getting there. But there are many ways to get the end result. Going back to business and entrepreneurship, those at a higher level of mastery of entrepreneurship can create more concrete value and thus get paid more in a week than someone in the earlier stages could do in years. And it's the thoughts that they sequence together that come up with the ideas and the execution plan and the team and so forth, all the elements necessary to make that happen. Calmness is power. So, I mentioned this earlier, you can arrive to the destination through sheer force and just pushing and pushing and pushing. But that would make for an unfulfilled life, unhappy life, a stressful life. And when you get there, you might find yourself with physical issues that are a result of the excess cortisol in the body. You might find yourself ungracefully aging. You might find yourself injured because you weren't paying attention, because you weren't present. All these things could happen. But if you try to maintain flow, and that's the kind of calmness we're talking about, you could even say the power, presence, and warmth is flow also, right? Flow is where skill meets challenge. But if you have the power, presence, and warmth, then that's the calmness we're talking about. We're not talking about doing nothing. The calm man, having learned how to govern himself, knows how to adapt himself to others, and they in turn reverence his spiritual strength and feel that they can learn of him and rely upon him. The more tranquil a man becomes, the greater is his success, his influence, his power for good. Even the ordinary trader will find his business prosperity increase as he develops a greater self-control and equanimity, for people will always prefer to deal with a man whose demeanor is strongly equable. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you want a copy of this mind map, it's in the link in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I will talk to you soon. Take care.